What's up, One Church? How you feeling today? So good to see you. Welcome back. We are in week 2 of Comeback in Gehenna. We've been back in Northwest. What's up, Northwest, by the way? Love you. Go ahead and make some noise over there. Oh, I heard you all the way from Old Henderson. Come on. We love Northwest. We love everybody online. Man, this has been just an amazing time. I've said it kind of week in and week out, but it is just a cool season to see what God is doing. And what I've found is many times when I'm in a season where my flesh has been disrupted, something in my spirit comes alive. There's something like, in my spirit going, man, God is doing something unique and different. And I've got to say, there's been years where I've really been sensing that God wants to do something that only He can get the glory for. Don't you have this desire, like a deep desire to be a part of something divine, something that God is doing that only He can do, something we can't manufacture, something that only the Spirit can do? And I just think right now in the midst of chaos, for some are sliding into hopelessness. I think in the middle of that, the Spirit is beginning to work and stir in the hearts of people something very unique, something different, something organic, and something powerful. And I don't know about you, I just want to be in the flow of that. And so I invite you to join me as we're taking these steps, and just thankful for you. Thanks for being here and taking these steps of faith. We love to serve you and your family. And we're doing kind of both the in-person and the online, and we're trying to do both the very best we can. So even if you're in a place where you're not ready to rejoin in person, take advantage of everything we have online. It would take me forever to tell you about all of it. Just go to one.church, explore, go to our social media sites. We have things for your family, your kids. We're beginning our groups right now. We have people already beginning to sign up for that, virtual groups and in-person and everything. So a great time to be a part of the family of God. Started a series last week, and it's going to be a 6-week series. I shared with you last week, this is something I began talking about 5 years ago as a church. And when I taught through it 5 years ago, I had just a bunch of people come to me and say, man, you need to write that down so that we don't lose it. And so for the past 5 years, I've been trying to write this as a kind of a short book. And it's one of the things I was telling my wife the other day. I want to write it ultimately for my kids and then for everybody else. But it's the one thing, if my time here is temporary, if I was to be taken out of this world early and my kids would have something that Dad said that they wouldn't forget, this is what I want them to have so that they know who they are in Christ. And hopefully my grandkids and my great-great-grandkids and my great-great-grandkids, everybody down the line gets it. And so I put a hard deadline at the end of this series. I'm trying to finish a chapter a week, get it done, and hopefully get it so that you can not only have it, but help your friends and family with it as well. We're talking about become. We started with this premise that God cares much more about who you're becoming than just what you're doing. And we live in this society, in this world, in a culture that's so driven by achievement that it's hard to really take comfort in who you're becoming. Achieving is much easier to calculate. I can count my money. I can quantify my success. But when it comes to becoming, how do you quantify becoming? I think it's one of the reasons we migrate towards doing, but becoming is really ultimately how we please God. And so what I'm doing is creating a grid for you, creating a, kind of helping make sure we have the right things in the right places so that ultimately we can feel good about who we're becoming. Last week, I made a distinction between image and identity, okay? I defined it this way. Image is what I want you to believe about me, and identity is what is actually true about me. And actually, when it comes into our relationship with God, when God shows up in your life, He starts dealing with your identity, not your image. God's not terribly concerned with who you pretend to be in terms of making that any better. How many of you know God can't bless who you pretend to be? God can't heal who you pretend to be. God can't do work with who you pretend to be. It's who you actually really are. He does His greatest work in who you really are. And so if we'll move past image into identity, this is where the deepest work and the deepest sense of security really, really fortifies. And for us, even as people, we've all been there where we're sometimes not sure of the difference between our image and our identity. I think we've all had somewhat of an identity crisis around who am I really? Which one is me? Is it the darkest part of myself? Is it the best part? Which part is really me? And so and it's kind of logical how this happens. Like today I want you to allow this canvas here to represent you. This is you. And one day your mother was in a hospital and she was pushing out. She was fully dilated and she got maybe some Pitocin. Come on, somebody. Anybody, what do you know about Pitocin? Got a few amens in the house. She bit down real hard and she pushed out, boom, and you showed up in the world, okay? And you showed up as a blank canvas, a blank canvas. And from the moment you were born, the world began to color on you, and they began to draw on you, and they began to say things to you and about you. And this happened from people either telling you that you were beautiful, maybe they told you that you were a cute baby, or maybe not. This starts to come to the surface in all kinds of areas. We end up with colors on us, and some of the colors are bright colors. And I'm channeling my inner Bob Ross, by the way. Bob Ross is on, I can't remember, Hulu, Netflix, Prime, but you can go find him. It's just amazing. Isn't Bob Ross, can I get an amen for Bob Ross? I mean, all of a sudden you're watching him, you're like, man, that really looked like a scribble, and all of a sudden it's like a log cabin. Like, I don't know how he did it, but anyway, so people begin to paint on you, and some of the colors are bright, and some of the colors are dark. And as I'm painting this, like each one of us has our version of this. In fact, the colors that go on your canvas are things like your education, right? Your education, where you were educated, how educated you are, how much education you were able to receive, how you did in school, your grades, and whether you were on the honor roll or not. And other things show up with this. Our social life, how we do with people, whether we sat alone at the table or not. And you know what happens is over time, we sort of sometimes take the same situation, depending on who you are, it causes us to behave in different ways. Like, for example, if I'm somewhat embarrassed about my level of education, I feel like I'm not as educated, I'm not as smart, I might actually see myself as dumb, and so I may act dumb. I may try to be like, kind of have that as part of my identity, part of my image, and so I lean into it. Or maybe I feel like, I'm not that educated, but I don't want everyone to think I'm dumb, so I pretend to be more educated than I am. I maybe want to try to use big words or posture, or maybe I feel like, my success, I'm not very successful, so I look for symbols of success because I don't feel like I'm that successful, so I go, man, well, I'm going to go into maybe debt to buy things that will make people think I'm successful. If I dress a certain way, or if I drive a certain car, or whatever that might be. Sometimes people, their identity starts to be built around things like, their social life, like who I know, who I'm connected to. We've all met that person who really needs to check themselves into Name Droppers Anonymous. Right? You met that person, it's like, hey, you pick that up, you just drop that name there. Just, they want you to know who they know and how connected they are. I would say romance actually goes on our canvas as well, like romance or a lack of romance. Maybe if you feel like, for whatever reason, everybody else seems to be meeting somebody except you, that sometimes paints on your canvas. Sometimes people feel a need to show how desirable they are, so they may brag about, their sexual history, or maybe they talk about how many people they turned down. Okay, everybody wanted them, and okay, so romance shows up on here. I think race shows up on here. Race shows up on here, like how I see myself, how I see my race. Whether I think it makes me more or less beautiful, whether I think it makes me more or less valuable. This all shows up on our canvas, and people say things to us that make us think one thing or another. I think body image shows up on here, how you feel, whether you were genetically gifted or not. Maybe you're like me, and I look at a carb and I gain 5 pounds. I'm just straight up like my wife made muffins this week, and I smelled them, and I put on weight. And then there are others. Maybe you're like, you're scrawny, and you're like, it doesn't matter. I could eat all the protein in the world. I can't gain a pound. Okay, whatever it might be. This all starts to paint on our canvas. I think failure, especially like big time failure, maybe you blew it morally, or you went and you tried to shoot your shot in your career and it didn't quite work out, and you missed big. And so I think sometimes those big time failures, that takes a dark color and it really just starts to cloud our canvas with a dark color. Trauma puts darkness. In fact, the closer the trauma was to you, if it was someone that really should have loved you, a parent, a family member, somebody that you trusted, any kind of abuse, emotional, verbal, sexual, physical abuse, many times just starts to take over our canvas, and it's how we see ourselves. And we start to wonder, to be honest, like trying to figure ourselves out, who am I? And what's the difference between my image and my identity? What part of this is really me, and what part of this was just something that somebody put on me? What we're gonna do today is we're gonna start the process of deconstructing our identity. We're gonna start it. It's not gonna end today. It's something that is going to begin today, and God is going to use throughout your life, and you're going to receive revelations. And through this process, as you do this and you pray through this, and you start to identify what your canvas looks like and what each bright or dark color means. Each bright or dark color maybe is a one-liner, or it's a story, or it's a situation that you walk through. And as you start to see that, all of a sudden what happens is God helps you to deconstruct and to take it down and to see yourself how he sees you. All right, I'm gonna press pause on that, and I wanna take you over here to this. All of us, every one of us who's listening to this message, every person, the 7 billion people that have ever lived, we've all, more than 7 billion have ever lived. 7 billion that are alive right now, and all the however many have ever lived. We're all designed by God with two massive core needs. The first one is security, and the second one is fulfillment. Fulfillment. We all have a need, a core need for these two things, security and fulfillment. In the next 4 weeks, I'm going to take 2 weeks to talk about two words. As a child of God, where we find our security. And I'm gonna give you the words, I'm gonna unpack them over the next 4 weeks. And then the 2 weeks after that, we're gonna talk about two words of where we find our fulfillment. It's important we not only get all 4 words, but we get them all in the right place. And so think about this now, security and fulfillment. Everything you've ever purchased, or everything you've ever bought into promised you one or both of these things. The big decisions in your life that you make are made based on security and fulfillment. Let's take, for example, marriage. Why would you get married and make this huge commitment except for these two things? Security and fulfillment. I'm gonna make a commitment that people are gonna come and go out of my life except this one person that's gonna be there for better or for worse. I mean, we stand up in front of God and everybody, all our family, and we go for better or for worse, sickness and in health, till death do us part, okay, that this is, what is it? It's security. And as we choose a person, we choose someone that we believe is going to make life more fulfilling. It's better with this person. Life is better with you. Where does marriage break down? Well, marriage breaks down when one of these two breaks down. There's been a breach of security. I no longer feel secure in this relationship. I feel insecure. Or I no longer feel fulfilled in this relationship. I don't think I'm fulfilling you. I don't think you're fulfilling me. Hey, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. So I'm not fulfilled. I'm not secure. Let's just go our separate ways. We're in the middle right now of an election. And this election, is like the other elections in that every candidate, if I'm running for president, if I'm running for office, I am going to try to sell you on these concepts. If you vote for me, if you elect me, I will make you more secure and more fulfilled. And so it's my job to help you believe that about me, and then believe that if you elect this other person, you'll be less secure and less fulfilled. Every item that you purchase, you buy a car, what are the safety features? Okay, what kind of airbags you got? What are the anti-lock brakes? And by the way, I like how the rims look, okay? And I like how this thing, they got you on there. They're waxed it all, wax on, wax off. I'm gonna take this one off the lot because I'm gonna look more fulfilled and I'm gonna feel more fulfilled. And boy, that new car smell, it just does something to my spirit, and it's safe, okay? I could go on and on and on and on and on. This is how we've been designed by God. Now, how sinister would God be if he designed all of us to need these two things and then made no way for us to have it? That'd be pretty sinister of God. That's some mustache twisting type stuff. And that's just not God. That's not how God does it. God would not make all of us with these two core needs and then have no way to attain these things. The problem is we go about getting these two things all the wrong ways. At best, we buy into things that only give us a faux version, a temporary version of what God wants to give us even more. Think about, Jesus says to the woman at the well, if you drink from what I give you, you'll never be thirsty again. He says later, it'll be like rivers of living water, fulfilling and bringing a deep sense of security. And so what we have to do is we have to look at our Creator and say, the one who created us this way, what does he say is the method by which we find these two things? What I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna start with the first word on this, and the first word is loved. Loved. And in order to really bring this to life, I wanna go and actually compare and contrast two fathers, the Old Testament father Isaac, and then God as Father in the New Testament, and we'll see kind of how we end up where we end up, all right? Let's jump back in the story that we looked at last week in the book of Genesis 25. We looked at these twins, Jacob and Esau, and they had a father named Isaac. It says in chapter 25, verse 28, it says that Isaac, the father, loved Esau. Ultimately, he loved him more than Jacob. Jacob was preferred by his mother. Esau was preferred by his father. It describes Esau as actually a hairy man's man. He's a hunter, a skilled hunter. And clearly it says that Isaac preferred Esau. He thought, man, that's the son. When I imagine having a son, that's what I wanted, a hairy hunter, man. And he's a hairy hunter, and man, that's what I wanted. And Jacob, it says, was hairless, and he didn't have hair on his body, and he liked to cook and be inside, and it didn't fit his father's profile, so his father ignored him and paid attention to his brother. Over time, Jacob gets to the place where he goes, you know what? He had a deep-seated insecurity. Deep-seated insecurity. By the way, let me define security and insecurity. Insecurity is building your identity or your life on anything that can be taken away. Anything that can be taken away. If I build my identity on my money or my reputation or my career or my health or my body image or my relationships, if I build it on that, by definition, I will be insecure. Jesus said it himself in Matthew 7. He said, the foolish man builds his house on sand. And when the rains came and the floods came, the house fell apart. Why? Because sand it changes, it blows around. He said, the wise man builds his house on the rock, and when the rains come and the winds come, the house stood firm. Insecurity is building your identity and your life on anything that can be taken away. And so the opposite is true as well. Security is building your life and your identity on anything that can't be taken away. What can't be taken away. So that's what we got to figure out. What can't be taken away? For Jacob, the reason he was insecure is because the love of his father was conditional. And he didn't have it, so look what he does. Later on, he wants to be blessed by his father. And in chapter 27, it says when he went in to be blessed by his father, it says in verse 16, he covered his arms and the smooth part of his neck with the skin of a young goat, okay? He goes and he wants his father to approve of him, and so he puts on his brother's garments that smells like his brother. At this point, his father is old and is virtually blind, so he can't see him. So what he does is he decides, I am going to pretend to be Esau. I'm going to pretend to be what my father approves of. And so he goes in and he gets these goat skins and he wraps his arms in goat skins and puts it around his neck. And he puts his brother's clothes on so he smells like him, and he has the wild game like what his brother makes. And it says he goes in to his father And look at this, verse 18. Isaac answered, "Who are you, Esau or Jacob?" And Jacob replied, "It's Esau, your firstborn son." He pretends to be his brother because he knows what's under the goat skin is his real arm. And his real arm isn't what his father prefers, and so he pretends to be Esau. And I've got to say, I can't think of a more accurate picture of a person who walks through life feeling that who I really am isn't approved of. If you got close enough to me to see who I really am, if you saw what was under what I showed you, what was under the goat skin, and you saw my actual arm, you wouldn't approve. Now watch this. Isaac is in the room and he's going, something feels off. He feels like Esau and he smells like Esau, but I want you to come closer. What Jacob tries to do to fool his father is to stay far enough away that the appearance would fool him. But Isaac says, "Come closer to me, come closer." And he said, "Come closer so I can touch you and make sure that it really is Esau." So Jacob went closer to his father. And you could almost feel like in this text, like, oh, if I get close enough, is he gonna see me for who I really am? So Isaac touched him and he said, something's not right. The voice is Jacob's, the hands are Esau's. He didn't recognize Jacob because his hands felt hairy like Esau's, like the plan was kind of working. And so Isaac prepared to bless Jacob. He's gonna bless Jacob because he looks like Esau. He said, "But are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "Yes, I am," Jacob replied. Then Isaac said, Now, my son, bring me the wild game. Let me eat it, and then I'll give you my blessing." Back to doing versus being. Give me what I want. And so Jacob took the food to his father, and Isaac ate it. And he also drank wine that Jacob served him. And Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come a little closer. Kiss me, my son." And this is our fear. This is our fear. We get closer and closer. We're going to be found out. And so Jacob went over and he kissed him. And then Isaac caught the smell of his clothes and he was finally convinced. And the Bible says then he blesses his son. See, what happens is the blessing of the father ultimately was the birthright, the inheritance, the estate of the family. So in a sense, Jacob won big here because he was able to sort of pull off the scheme. He was clever and shrewd and he figured it out, but yet he received something that didn't belong to him. So even though dad didn't know, even though the world doesn't know, I know that this isn't really me. That underneath this is really me. And this is why we live oftentimes very, very insecure, because we have this deep, deep-seated fear that we're going to be found out. It's like that imposter syndrome. And I think many of us actually believe that the real version of us, the person I really am, is all the dark stuff. It's the most deceitful parts of me. It's the most impatient parts of me. It's the angriest parts of me. It's the parts of my flesh. We think that who I really am does not deserve to be loved or blessed. And so we live with this deep-seated insecurity that I will be found out. And the only way that I can get good things is through deceit and hypocrisy. So even though I may even succeed and I may attain some things and receive some things and be able to stack some things, it doesn't really belong to me. I'm an imposter and I'm probably gonna lose it. And so it's only a matter of time before justice catches up with me and the other shoe drops and everything comes crashing down. Life feels like a house of cards. It's only a matter of time before he catches a whiff and he goes, "Oh no, that's really you." And the skin gets ripped off and I'm exposed. And this is the dynamic that Isaac, as father, created for his son Jacob. All right, I want you to press pause on that for a minute. And I want us to jump all the way into the New Testament. The New Testament. God as Father. The perfect Father. Who sets up our identity in the way that it should be. We put this in order. Here's what God the Father does. In Matthew chapter 3, Jesus is beginning his ministry and he's baptized. And in verse 16, it says, after his baptism, as Jesus came up out of the water, the heavens were open and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and settling on him. And a voice from heaven said, from God the Father to Jesus the Son, this is my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy. Now the power of this verse is in the context. The context is Jesus had done nothing to be approved of. He had accomplished nothing. He hadn't walked on water. He had not turned water into wine. He had not done the Sermon on the Mount. He wasn't magna cum laude. He didn't have any big trophies. He wasn't homecoming king. He wasn't anybody's All-American. He hadn't lettered in sport. He didn't start a successful business. He had done nothing. He had no money, nothing, zero. It's the beginning of it. This is my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy. In essence, if you have hair on your arms or not hair on your arms, you are my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy. The thing God does here is he's setting the identity of the Son, because what we know as we read on in the Gospels is that Matthew 3 leads to Matthew 4. In Matthew 4, Jesus goes in the wilderness to be tempted and tested. And so life gets really hard. And so it's like the Father saying to the Son, listen, it's about to get hard. It's going to be difficult. You're going to have people lie about you. You're going to have friends stab you in the back and deny you, and you're going to be misunderstood. And people are literally going to call you Beelzebub, Satan. They're going to misunderstand you. Some of them are going to threaten you. They're going to try to kill you, and then they will kill you. So it's about to be real high, real low, real high, real low. And when your life is doing this, you got to have something doing this. And here's what this is. This is, hey, before any of that, before the temptation, or you walk on water, in both places, here's what you are. You're my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy in just who you are. When you flunk, you're my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy. When you get an A+++, you're my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy. I don't approve of you any more or any less, just in who you are. See, the beginning of our security comes from understanding the state we're loved in, because what we end up with a canvas like this, and we know that every one of those colors represents a story, it represents a season, it represents pain, things we walk through, even the good things that have become things we're fearful of. But until you understand the first step of your security is that you're loved like this. You're loved like this. You're his dearly loved Son. You're his dearly loved daughter who brings him great joy. Now let me clear something up for you, because I know what some of y'all are thinking. You're thinking what I was thinking when I first read Matthew 3 and dearly loved Son who brings him great joy is, well, of course he's his dearly loved Son who brings him great joy. He's talking to Jesus. I mean, Jesus deserves to be a dearly loved Son who brings great joy because he was sinless. Well, here's what Paul helps us understand in Romans as he's helping us understand what all this means for us. He says in Romans 8:17, says, we are his children. We are his heirs. In fact, together with Christ, we are heirs of God's glory. We are joint heirs with Jesus. So in other words, the same affirmation that God had for Jesus, God has for you. In fact, Paul takes it to another level in Romans 5:8. It says that God demonstrated his own love toward us in that while we were sinners, he died for us. So man, we could take this to a whole new level and say if Romans 5:8 is true, it says that God not only loves us in this state, he loves us in this state. If the behind the scenes thing, if this was nothing but just evil, wicked, sinful, he demonstrated his love toward us in that when all we were was sin, then he died for us. That's the state. Listen, you will not walk in the true security of your life until you understand that if all you ever did from this day forward for the rest of your life, if all you ever did was fail, you wouldn't be any more loved than if all you ever did was succeed. Not even a little bit. Not even this much. You wouldn't be this much more loved in your success than you are in your failure. We're going to build on this, but this is the first big step. Because your security is regardless of what the company said about you, regardless of what the boss did to you, regardless of how quickly or why your ex left you, regardless of what you never had or what they said or what each of these colors and every brushstroke of your life means, that there's nothing that makes God love you any less. If you lost, listen to me. Look at me right here. If everyone left you, if you lost every dollar, if you lost every job, you had nothing. Nothing. There's my dearly loved son. He brings me great joy. Why? Because you're you. That's why. That's the beginning of the foundation of our security. It comes from something no one can take away. No one can take away. They can take your money, but they can't take that away. Hey, your health can be taken away. Your spouse can be taken away. Your kids can be taken away. Relationship can be taken away. Nobody can take that away. A wise man, a wise woman builds his or her house on the rock. And it starts with understanding how loved we are. Here's what will happen. As you start to understand this, you start to walk in this. It doesn't mean that it doesn't still sting when somebody walks out on you, or it doesn't mean it doesn't still hurt when you feel alone or you fail or whatever it might be. It doesn't mean you don't still hit the ball in the woods, right or left. No, it's when I get there and I start to feel these feelings of despair that I come back and I go, I'm his dearly loved son. When you start feeling the temptation to put on the goat skin because you feel like this isn't loved, you come back to this and go, nah. Sometimes it's just you in your car at the end of the day, you and God. It may feel like he's the only one smiling on you. That's the one that matters. It's my dearly loved son. It brings me great joy. Here's what will happen. When you understand this, you go from understanding it to believing in it. Believing it, here's what will happen. You will stop living for approval. And you'll start living from approval. The insecurity comes from when I'm doing everything for approval. I'm working for approval, and I just feel like I can't get approved enough. I got Esau's clothes on. I got the goat skin on. I brought the wild game, but it's just not going to be enough. The insecurity comes from for approval. Approve of me, approve of me, approve of me. And I go to work, approve of me. And I get into a relationship, approve of me. And then they leave, and I get a new relationship, approve of me, post something, approve of me, approve of me. And you live your whole life that way, because you don't know how loved you are. When you understand that you could fail for the rest of your life nonstop, and you'd be just as loved as if all you did was succeed, now you go, I've already been approved of, so now I live from approval. You show up to the meeting, I've already been approved of. You get in the relationship, I've already been approved of. You go about your life. You shoot your shot. You start your business. You do I do it from approval. I'm not trying to get something. I've already received something, and now it's flowing out of it. I'm flowing out of security. And if you didn't give it to me, you can't take it away from me. This comes from God himself. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment right now, and I want you to just allow God to speak to you. And what I'm going to do in a few minutes, I'm going to give you some really specific action steps. But before I give you an action step, I want you to turn to God in this moment and let God give you an action step. Whatever God is saying to you, take a moment to let him speak and have that conversation now.